Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 11th of June, comes to you from London. And we just see a sea of green here, just telling us that the markets generally are looking stronger. The dollar index up slightly, still short-term bearish with these two downside targets. Medium and long term just holding on to its bullishness. Against the euro, so Eurodollar just sinking a little bit, but still just holding on to short-term bullish, but flat and running out of steam. And the dollar against the yen is up, and so this it really is the sign that we probably will see a little bit of an improvement in the dollar over the coming days. Looking at sterling against the dollar, we're down slightly this morning, and the medium-term run is now over, and we're in bearish territory. And against the euro, sterling is also lower, so we are just seeing that sell-off continuing over the last few days, but no new downside targets, so it does make it hard to call where the bottom is. And if we look at sterling against the Swiss franc, we see we're sitting at about 125 this morning, so we are just edging lower all the time there. Taking a look at Bitcoin, we're sitting at $7,940. Just short-term in a sort of seesaw movement. Nothing on the medium and long-term charts that's changed that much, to be honest, and no clear targets in either direction, which we talked about yesterday. The S&P 500 index is up 0.5% this morning, overnight, so its run from last week continues. We saw that big candle last week and really almost gapping up, so quite interesting that we're seeing that strength returning to the market. And the Nasdaq really powering ahead. A lot of this big rise was tech-driven, of course, so we're seeing that bounce. We're still looking at the longer-term chart. We've still got a lot of work to do to really convincingly break the 2018 high, and that's true on most of the US indices. If we look here on the Dow, for example, we've struggled to break that. We've got almost like a triple top building here, and if we look at the Russell 2000 index, it's really obvious here the failure to get back to the levels that we saw in 2018. That is a worry for the market. This is effectively a breadth indicator in itself. The futures this morning, the S&P futures up 0.2%. The Nasdaq E-mini up 1/3%. So it does suggest the markets will continue their run and open higher in the US today. The UK market yesterday was up 0.5%, so is looking stronger. So that is quite key as well. And midcaps also were quite strong yesterday as well. So we are seeing the markets generally following the US market up. The DAX also was stronger, and the CAC 40 also was up 0.5% yesterday. So again, looking stronger there. Japan overnight was up 0.5%. The Hang Seng was up 0.9%, and the big one was China was up 2.6%. So we've seen a big jump there overnight, and that's just putting China back into short-term bullish territory. No clear upside targets yet, but it does look like we might be just finding some cloud support on the medium-term chart there. The long-term picture is still quite bearish, and we did get this new downside target which was activated. So having unwound some of these downside targets, this one was unwound, and then a new upside target. We've now produced a new downside target, two downside targets on the medium-term chart, both activated. So it's a mixed picture for China, and it could still go either way. The trade wars obviously having a big impact there, and the outcome of those will kind of decide which way the market goes, probably. The Sensex up 1/3%, still looking pretty bullish in all three time frames. Interestingly, we're seeing the short-term chart now producing new upside targets. This first one activated another 4% higher for the market, so looking pretty strong in India still. The Aussie market was up 1.6%, so quite a big move there. And Brent crude sitting at 62.57. We fell away at the end of yesterday, but we actually managed to recover back to those sort of 62.50 area. So we were nudging 64 at one stage yesterday. We do have a downside target of 62 here. No clear targets on the medium and long-term chart. And if we look at WTI, we do have an upside target of 5% on the short-term chart. US nat gas sitting at $2.37, still very much in the doldrums, just trying to move into bullish territory, but don't hold your breath, it's not going to be a big move there. Looking at gold, we see here that short-term run has slowly come to an end, but we do still have this upside target in place. It'll be interesting to see if we get another thrust off this pullback in the gold price, but we are seeing these three upside targets on the long-term chart looking more and more. It'd be interesting to see whether we can actually activate this recent target. Silver sitting also up this morning, but just breaking that downtrend a little bit as well. And if we look at the US 10-year yield sitting at 2.14%, slight improvement there. So that's just showing through on the chart as well. Taking a look at the individual stock performance last night on the Dow, we had the best performer was Goldman Sachs. They're up 2.3%. Intel continued their run, and we are just seeing here they've had a terrible May, but actually just now recovering off the floor. It'll be interesting to see whether they can fully recover. Walmart also looking pretty strong here, breaking the 2018 high, not quite above that one that we saw just over a year and a half ago, but we're seeing here the relative looking strong, Walmart actually looking pretty good, so that's quite key. United Technologies were down, even though there's a lot of news surrounding the merger there. So pushing higher all the same and still looking pretty good on the chart. If we take a look at the Nasdaq, we see here we've got Analog Digital. They were up 5.8%. Kraft Heinz 5.4%. If we go the other side, we had Insight Corporation. They were down 4.9%, and Netflix they were lower, down 2.5%. So quite key there as well. So interesting that we were seeing that sell off there in Netflix, just turning medium-term bearish, struggling again to make the 2018 high. We see the relative, although they jumped at the start of the year, they've really just been flat ever since. Looking at the Aussie market, the best performer was Vocus Group. They were up 8%, and that long-term recovery really still underway, and that outperformance really showing through on the chart. If we look at the downside, we had Star Entertainment down 15%, so they're really sinking much lower. China, we mentioned we saw big gains in China, and if we look at the percentage changes there, we had China Galaxy Securities up 10%. A lot of these financials, China Northern Rare Earth, which has been in the news quite a bit lately as well in the trade wars, up 7.8%, so looking pretty good there. The Nifty 50. If we look into India, we see here Z Entertainment up 3.4%. Not enough really to change the picture on this chart. Yes Bank we looked at yesterday, often in the leaders or laggards board at Yes Bank, very volatile in comparison. Again, not enough to really change the chart. And we look at the downside, there we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo Finance. Look at the downside, Indiable Housing, not so good there either. Taking a look at Europe, we're not quite open yet on the European prices, but yesterday in the UK market we had TUI Group up in sympathy really with Thomas Cook announcing the sale of their business. We are still not really changing that chart very much, and if we look at the downside, it was Ferguson Group. Next were also quite badly hit yesterday, down 3.4%. So quite key there. Looking at the FTSE 250, we see here that it was Millennium Copthorne. They were the best performer, up 36%, and quite a massive jump there. And Woodford Patent Trust, they continued to just fall lower as well. If we look at the European market, we had ASML Holdings in Amsterdam. They were the best performer yesterday. Still a pretty good looking chart. And if we look at the downside there, we had Sanofi. A good looking chart for Sanofi, but just struggling there. But long term, they do look like they're undergoing a recovery. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.